Next guest was on the show 2 weeks ago discussing cyberbullying, but internet security expert Paul C. Dwyer's main work is fighting online sex offenders from targeting children.
We've invited Paul back to talk about his work, so parents with children in the room, please take note that this conversation is of an adult nature. And a very good morning to you, Paul. You said something very frightening there just in the break, that child pornography is, there's an epidemic in this country at the moment. Yeah,
I believe so, and I believe it's not just in Ireland, it's in a lot of countries that we can see from North America right across Europe, that this is an absolute growing epidemic. The statistics bear that out. I mean, when Interpol in the mid-1990s had maybe 4,000 classified images, they now have over 1 million. You know, so it's something that's growing and growing. And even if we look at the recent cases in the media, we'll see that people say that they were curious, they got involved in it, and before they knew, they felt that they had a compulsion and an addiction to this, and by way of their excuse for getting involved in this sort of area.
And what's the average profile of somebody, you know, who's accessing child porn?
It's a really good question, because it's a middle-aged white man with children, married, kids, the whole lot. So that's 90% of the cases.
Yeah. Normally people have this image of somebody who might have a seedy look about them, but it's not him.
It's not, and it's really, you know, the statistics really bear this out, that, you know, for example, even the types of children that are being involved, we can look at that statistically, and I know it's a very uncomfortable subject to speak about, but we can see that they're now targeting pre-verbal children because they can't report it to people.
That is frightening. Yeah. Because they're going for these children because they haven't developed the skills of communication. Absolutely, and I mean, well,
it's also they're aware that how law enforcement works. I mean, law enforcement goes back to the peeling law enforcement system, where you make a report, the guards investigate it, and a complaint is being made. But if children can't complain, a complaint is never made. And you know, when they act in these groups and they trade material on these sort of levels, the people who are at the high end of that are the people that have new material. And it's frightening when you realise how they actually prove they have new material. For example, there's cases where they'll actually write across the torso of the child, "I am X's slut," those sort of things. They will hold up a piece of paper crumpled with the person's name who wants to buy these images or trade these images. And the reason the paper's crumpled is so they can prove they didn't Photoshop the image, and that it's fresh images, it's new, and that's what they want.
Now, we have some information about what's going on in Ireland. There was a study done a while ago by people in Florida about activity in Ireland.
Yeah, there's a well-known and well-respected company came over a couple of years ago. They gave a lot of time free, and they do this for law enforcement around the world, and they gave their software free and licensed to the Garda Síochána. And they ran an analysis across the web, and in that 1 month period, which is nearly 2 years ago now, it was frightening what they came across. They came across over 1,000 different locations that were sharing known classified hard class child indecent imagery. I don't like using the word pornography about it because it almost legitimizes it. It's indecent imagery. And the digital DNA of all of these files are actually known. They're categorized. They're on the largest database in the world with Interpol. And this is the sort of stuff they came across. And what was really frightening about that was they were actually able to break it down by town, by village. So it wasn't just that, you know, there was 500 cases in Dublin and you can get desensitized to numbers. It's when they actually showed that in Malahide there was 20 odd where I live, and I go, oh, wow. You know, this is something very local. It's in the rural towns. It's in all over Ireland.
And was there any prosecutions out of that information, or, you know, where people searched their houses searched or anything like that?
No, and that's something that I would take exception to, because I think that it's prima facie evidence that something is going on. They have the technology to actually trigger these people. Unfortunately, around the same time, the Garda Síochána wrote to all the internet service providers and asked them if they could start blocking images, but take responsibility to do that, to block the images. And that's a huge can of worms for people who aren't in law enforcement to get involved in that sort of thing. And there's privacy rights and all those things that go along with that. So probably not the right
what
solution.
Should parents be aware of? Parents watching this morning who have small children, or, you know, teenagers, you know, how are they getting access to these children? Okay,
well, the techniques vary, but generally speaking, what they will do is they will act like a child online. They will be very much up on what children are up on. So they will be into Bieber, they'll be into Vampire Diaries, all these sort of things that children are into. They will listen to the children online within chat groups and social areas and so on like that. And they will give them attention, they will give them affection, and eventually they may even give them presents by what they're known as cyber candy. They may give them iTunes vouchers, things like this, to build up trust and affection for whatever the children are doing online. But very quickly, they can change gear and they'll use intimidation. Generally, the intimidation factor comes in after they have exchanged images in some way. So what they would tend to do is they will get the child maybe to flash at a camera or something like that, and then they will say, I'm going to share that with everybody unless you send me more. And they will try and get the child in and so on like that. And that's how they build it up. Their overall aim, in most cases, is a face-to-face meeting with the child. That's what they want.
You say that they can make threats as well if the child isn't cooperating. They will threaten to visit the home. They'll threaten to attack one of the parents. Absolutely. I mean, we've seen this all the time. If they find one technique isn't working, but they find that they have a weak or vulnerable child or someone that's susceptible to this. And what we're talking about here is initially seduction techniques. They're seducing a child. That's what grooming is. They're seducing a child online, trying to get them to trust. But when they find that's not working, or they're coming off the hook, so to speak, they will try and intimidate the child. And at that stage, they will have already worked out who their parents are on Facebook, on other social networks and so on like that, and say, I'm going to kill your daddy. That's a common thing. I'm going to kill your dog. Whatever they have love for. And that's where it actually changes. And the game changes and the child crumbles at those points, and we see that a lot of cooperation then takes part. So even in very young children find that they're not so much concerned about themselves as the people and things that they actually love. Okay, so what do we do to stop it? Well, we've put up a list on stopcyberbullies.ie of 10 things parents can do in order to reduce the risk of these sort of things happening. But, you know, one of the key things is education. There's really 3 things required here. There's what's known as the 3 E's. You want to educate the children, educate parents as to what to look out for, those sort of things. We need to enforce laws. The laws in Ireland are way behind the technology that these guys use and everything else like that. But there is a European Convention on Cybercrime which Ireland signed 11, 12 years ago and still hasn't ratified. Australia's ratified it, the United States, the United Kingdom, pretty much the whole world has ratified it, except Ireland. Why? So we have no enforcement around these laws. And finally, we need engineering. We need some techniques there that are used within the internet. I'm not talking about blocking so much because that's only semi-effective, but engineering in relation to how the internet is structured within Ireland so that these things can be triggered, and if they're triggered, then they're followed through. But there should be zero tolerance, and there should be minimum custodial sentences. There is no cure for this. When people get a taste for this, they do it forever. The only way to cure them is to surveil them or incarcerate them.
Well, on a very simple level, if you're saying that the average profile is a middle-aged man who's married with children, then maybe the partner should be checking, you know, computers at home.
It's a very good point. I mean, and we found this, but it's not. There's even women involved in this as well who will actually partner in with their partners on it, and they get involved in this whole murky world and so on like that as well. So certainly, if anybody has any suspicions, they should look and see if there's something, and then bring it to the attention of the guards. Okay, why haven't we brought in laws that would block sites and prevent them? You know, I know in the UK you were saying Australia, America, several countries in Europe, we're trailing behind. So what's the I think that there's a lot of complex arguments there, but they're very weak in relation to if we bring in internet filtering, we're getting down on people's privacy rights, we're getting down on potential investment from foreign direct investment, things like that. There is some complex issues there in how it actually works and all those things, but we should have it in place. You know, there's no excuse for not having it in my book, and not just around indecent imagery and what we refer to as cyber scum and things like that, but people's identities being stolen, criminals working on the cyber underground cyberground economy, all of those sort of things. We need to have proper cybercrime laws in this country, and we don't. We're trying to use criminal damage acts from 1991 to actually deal with this sort of stuff. It's crazy. Well, I think the short-term solution is that our children shouldn't be on social networking sites. I think I was semi-agree with you. They need to follow the rules of the age restrictions put on them. They need to have parental controls put on. I think that children should embrace and use the internet, but with supervision. Put the computer, and remember, smartphones and computers, tablets, computer, put it in the family area, not in the bedroom. And it makes me cringe when I see computer manufacturers advertising computers and a young girl in a bedroom on the laptop. What message is that sending out?
Okay, Paul, thank you for scaring the light out of any parent watching.
But also making us aware of the dangers.
Exactly.
And we thank you for that.
Thanks for coming on.
Welcome.
Now, after the break, we meet